what's the technique you apply for negotiating salary? What?
And this is where the core PM works. The first question is on your code that they ask you, tell me about yourself. And then I move on to the next part, which is actually focusing the work that I've done.
Yeah, this is just like a lead code,
Yes, this
but
is lead code for PMs.
welcome to round two. For people who might have not watched the round one, you should go check it out. Link in the description. But for people who might have not watched, let's do a quick intro.
Hello everyone, this is Anurup Sahu. I am currently living in Chicago, Illinois, originally from India, and currently I'm trying to work on social commerce space for Expedia, where we're trying to bring some interesting new product stuff that we're doing.
All right. So in the first part, we talked about how to get interview calls and like how can you get attention of hiring managers and recruiters and getting an interview call. This one I want to focus on, like, let's say you got an interview call. Like, one, how do you prepare for it and how do you crack for it? So what's the first step people should take once they start preparing for their interview calls?
So the first step I would do generally is try to understand whom I'm interviewing with
Mm,
and also try to gauge and understand. So it's a misconception that a lot of people have that they cannot ask the recruiter who their interviewer was. They can definitely ask, they can definitely reach out to their recruiter, identify who they are interviewing with, because that would help them understand whom they're talking to, have some extra questions that would relate to them. And that would also give you extra room for that 30 to 45 minutes that you're talking to that person, how you can create your own set of questions pre-built.
mm, mm,
And that's one way of also trying to structure. And the next part, since we are talking about product management, it revolves around prepping for that interview. There are
mm,
different ways to prep. Prep one strategy would be to go to do mocks, where you can do mocks with your friends who are also preparing for product management,
mm,
or you can try to identify Slack channels or Discord groups that generally exist where you can reach out to new folks who are actually interviewing with you or with you, around you.
mm,
So you can get an understanding of from them how you are preparing. So that is one way of identifying doing things.
mm.
So if you're trying to prepare for core product areas, that's where you're trying to identify the feature sets of a product. If you don't mind, I can also share and walk you through it.
Yeah, yeah,
So
absolutely.
yeah, sure.
Let's do it.
So yes, this is a resource called Mobin.com, which gives you the UI designs of all the different products that exist in the US
Wow.
in Proficient. So you can actually click on, say, for example, we're on SoundCloud. We're trying to see SoundCloud. So it will exactly give you the journey of SoundCloud, how the user actually navigates through the app. And this is where the core PM works come into picture also. So the core
Mm.
PM is generally responsible to identify how am I onboarding my users, how are my users feeling about the experience that they're getting, and how am I trying to improve those kind of feature sets.
Hey, before we move on to the next part, I want to quickly talk about Prodigy Finance. This video is not sponsored by them, but they have been a great affiliate partner and I want to talk about what do they do. If you're someone like me who comes from a lower middle class family, have no property, no asset, but still have the dreams of studying abroad in United States, you need an education loan, but no bank will provide you a loan without having an asset or a collateral. That's where Prodigy Finance is awesome because they don't judge you based on your financial history. Instead, they make a bet based on your credibility, which is awesome, and that's why I love them. I've been working with them for last 5 years. I highly recommend you to check it out. Link in the description. And now back to the video.
If you see onboarding, it will take you through that journey only and how
Mm,
they have created that. And similarly, say for
mm,
example, you want to watch the website.
mm.
So you're trying to target a web product manager role as well. You can try to do
Let's do
that here
Calendly.
as well. If you see, they have defined the flows for them. And these are few areas that you can see. And then as you go through them, you can define your own case study material or content that you can create yourself.
Oh, this is so
And
good.
then you can
So,
brainstorm.
right. So you are taking this material like and then focusing on like as a core product manager, you would be focusing on something like this and then you create a case study for yourself like what maybe potentially they can improve on this or
Right.
things like that. And that becomes your preparation for the interview.
Right. And this is for, say, for example, the specific focus area was core PM.
Mm.
And if you're now focusing on a tech PM, then you would want to learn more about service design.
Yeah.
So this is Alexu, and he has created system design interview books. And for
Mm.
that, I would refer him, follow his content, and he posts regular content as well. And then there is another focus area, that is the growth area, wherein if you see, the growth roles are generally about improving business value, prioritization decisions, and quick decision making. So
Mm.
to develop those kind of areas, there are some case studies that you can also refer to. And for that, the resource is growth.design. Give you content in an interactive video format, so interactive PPT format. So you can actually interact with them, and they're actually giving you a breakdown of the UI. They're trying to see what goes wrong. For example, in this case, Bing, and they're trying to see what is wrong, how the users would react to such kind of content. And
Mm.
then they would basis this, try to give a workaround or how the particular product team should think about. So this is giving you a start on how you can think on such kind of area focus. And then you build on to this and try to create your decision making skills, where you may want to create your own case studies. And why I'm stressing on creating your own case studies is because this would help your portfolio. And that
Mm.
portfolio is something that we would then show to recruiters or hiring managers to help them create what we have done so far in our product strength. So this may work also for roles, grad PM roles, or this may also work for PM
For
roles
senior
who
PM
are,
roles as well. Yeah.
yes, a full scale.
What is a typical interview process for product management?
So generally, when you start with an interview process, you would have the recruiter round where you talk to the recruiter, get introduced to the role. And the second round after that is generally for grad roles, it's a case study round. And for senior roles or maybe experienced roles, it's around a hiring manager round. For internships or maybe for even for a grad role, they would generally be giving you a case study where after you have been shortlisted based on your resume, they would give you a case study for a week or so, and then they would test your skills on how you could prove to be a good experienced PM in this role. For me, the case studies that I worked for my internships were how we can improve accuracy delivery estimates for DoorDash or for GoPuff.
Mm.
So
Mm.
how we can do those aspects. So that was testing my prioritization model. And to
Mm.
just give you a small example, when I was trying to connect for my interview for my internship, I interviewed at Bstock, which
Mm.
is a liquidation organization.
Yeah.
So the VP of product at that time gave me a case study where she also wanted to see how I am setting up Jira as well. So
Mm.
I actually browsed her through a Jira portfolio that I had created for a product, wherein I showed her my user story writing skills as well. So for
Mm.
internships, generally the focus area is they want to create a user story or epic. That epic is generally a mix
Yeah,
of user
like a
stories that,
feature. Yeah. Hmm.
yes, a feature breakdown that they would want to see from an internship point of view. After this, the next step generally is talking to the hiring manager if it's a experience role, and or either if it's a case study round, then you talk to the hiring manager round. And once you talk to the hiring manager, it's a 30-minute discussion where they try to see your product sense, that is your basic understanding on product. And they also try to see your leadership skills or behavioral, where they try to ask or question, how have you dealt with products in the past? Or if you were in such a scenario, how would you deal with it? And
Mm.
that gives them a sense of understanding whether this could be a good fit for the role or not. And post that, you go to an on-site, which
Mm.
is generally where you talk to teammates that you would be generally talking to. Teammates could be a product manager, a product designer, a product engineer, or even engineering managers or design
Mm.
leads, and even
Hmm.
marketing and sales
Yeah.
personalities.
Yeah.
So that would give you an overall over sense of everything for the hiring manager to make a decision whether you're a good fit or not. And
Mm.
once that on-site is done, generally within 2 or 3 weeks, they give you a decision that this is a good fit or not.
Mm,
Yep.
and then the offer stage will happen. Okay. When you meet with hiring manager, I know you have one of the secret sauces which puts you above the crowd because you do something very different and unique. Like I know you present your portfolio and you build a presentation for yourself when they ask you, tell me something about yourself. And then you're like, wait a minute, let me pull something up for you. So
Yes.
walk us through that.
Yeah, sure. So generally, this is something that I have identified after failing a lot of interviews, that the first question is on your code, that they ask you, tell me about yourself. And that's where you create your first impression. And creating that first impression is very important because after that interview is done, they remember the first part and the last part. So the first part has to be something that they go back with. So I started creating visual memory maps, because visual memory learning is generally more astound to the brain, and also they create more references when they are actually making that decision. Yes, so generally I create this small animoji, which is making this a lighter mood, wherein I'm trying to set the context of who am I. I'm a product candidate who's trying to interview for
And
this role.
so for people who, just to give context, when hiring managers ask you, tell me something about yourself, you typically, that answer is usually like anywhere from 5 minutes to 10 minutes. For some people,
Yes.
I hope it's not more than 10 minutes. Some
Oh,
people
yes.
usually finish that answer in 30 seconds as well. So don't do that mistake. Use this is your opportunity to create your like first impression. So you use this to answer that question.
Yes. So this is the space where how am I as an individual is being
Mhm.
showcased.
Yeah.
So I'm a fun-loving guy. I like to play around with animations, Figma, design. So I try
Mm.
to create an emoji to make that emphasize to somebody who is looking at this for the first time. And then I move on to the next part, which is actually focusing the work that I've done. So
Mm.
when you speak, you're not able to create the visual for what you have spoken about, and
Mm.
that's where you set in a cue or context for somebody who is looking at these uh, designs or some work that you have done that creates a memory for them, a visual memory for them, making them keep a memory of you and also giving them questions around these areas. So you're actually giving them a cue that these are some questions that I have prepared for. Please ask me them. So,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
if you
yeah.
see, memory is
You
generally around them.
right, and you are kind of directing the interview versus
Yes,
them directing the interview, because you are like probing them, like, hey, look at these things, and then most likely they will
right,
ask you this question, and you already know because you prepared for it. Go
right,
ahead, go ahead.
exactly.
Yeah.
And just to give you a little context, most of the hiring managers generally are busy in their daily life. They have been given this interview where they may have some questions or sometimes they come unprepared. So when they are coming unprepared, that's your bang on idea that you have actually identified a person who is a perfect target audience for such kind of content, and you can
Mm,
actually
mm,
drive that complete conversation towards your ball court. So if you see, the orange areas are the areas where I have identified the product areas I've worked on or the problems that I've worked on. So
mm,
location-based services, personalized cloud storage, and social media e-commerce. So these are
mm,
domain areas that I have identified or worked on, and there
mm,
are some achievements that I've done. So these
mm,
achievements are different from what I've shown on my resume. So they are creating a different character sketch about me when I'm talking to the hiring manager. I am talking about the different products I've worked in the US, which is a
mm,
marketplace product. So this gives them a picture that this kind of product manager is more suited for an e-commerce kind of a role or X kind of a product domain area that he might have more specialized on. So that creates a picture about you. And the last one I end with is generally what I've done apart from product management. So when I'm not doing product, I have a small YouTube channel with my friend. We are talking about food and stuff. And some on the other side that I do is trying to give back to the community in whichever way I can, trying to help
mm, mm,
NGOs on that stuff. So these are few areas where you try to give a holistic self of your experiences and also gives
mm.
out your personal self to the recruiter.
I love this. I can like putting myself in a hiring manager position. If I were to ask you, like, hey, tell me something about yourself, and you presented this, it automatically puts you on the very top, because one, nobody's doing this, and like
Yes,
typical answers like, yeah, my name is Yudi. I did my master's in computer science, and I last 7 years I've been working in healthcare industry as blah blah blah. I
yes.
did this. It's
It
the that
becomes
yeah, that's the typical answer, which most likely I'm not paying attention. I've already lost you since you started talking about it. So
yes,
I'm like, okay, then I'm gonna move on to my next set of questions, which I've already prepared for you, or based on your resume. But this is gonna be like, oh, okay, this it's like a surprise factor for me. So I'm gonna
right,
now pay attention to what you're saying, and then I'm going, okay, like you mentioned something about the social e-com, like social
right.
media. We are dealing with this, like how, like what did you do there? So you directed me to ask you that question.
Yes,
So
and
it's a
I have an answer for this, and then I know these would be some questions that you would be asking, so I know the entire interview now. So
nice. I
that's
love
how I
this. I
generally
love
do it.
so awesome. So awesome. Thank you for sharing this. People should take a note of this, and don't copy paste it. Make it your own, because you're not Anurup. he has his own stories and own vision.
Yes.
So personalize it for yourself.
I'd like to also stress, since you have created your own presentation and you also have a sense that the recruiter or the hiring manager would be asking you around these questions, so prepare stories, make them a note to keep it on your documents. So for me, even the first four slides are a script that I have actually written on a Word doc. Try to read it 1,000 times to see if it's actually making sense, if it's within 5 minutes or
Mm.
10 minutes, so that I am not going overboard with this idea where it becomes overwhelming for the other person who is actually on the other side.
Maybe what we can do is we can do a follow up like a video on just the interview rounds and how, like, what are the questions, and then even like maybe do a further like example of how to answer those questions. For example, like you said, if you are a PM for a Facebook, how would you design a handyman app or
Right.
something like that? So if you are interested in something like that, let us know in the comment section. I volunteered Anurup that he's gonna help us.
For sure,
um,
anytime.
on a high level, not the deep level, but on a high level, how would you structure your answers? But so go ahead, share us the resources.
Just before I do that, I would want to say for product sense kind of interviews, you generally have a structure wherein you try to identify by asking questions or clarifying questions what is the exact thing that they want from that particular question. It can be a simple question, design a handyman app as if you're a Facebook PM. So you want to identify the questions that which area do you want to tap onto so that if you see Facebook is a marketplace, it's generally two kind of ecosystems from Facebook creators to Facebook viewers. In similar cases, if you're creating a handyman app, there would be service seekers and service
Mm.
givers. So, how would you differentiate between these two and ask those clarifying questions to understand the goal of that particular product case? And then you
And
try to identify,
the reason
yeah,
you
sorry,
want to ask a clarifying question is because as a product manager, you will be interviewing user to collect
right,
your requirements. So they are trying to see how do you gather requirements, how do you approach requirement gathering phase, because that's going to be your primary focus
right.
if you are products and product based PM. Yeah.
I hope you can see my screen. This is a PM Exercises website, which
Okay.
generally gives you a breakdown of the company, the question type, and if you see there is product design, product improvement, product solving, launch
Mm.
strategy, A/B testing. So this gives you the actual interview questions that generally come, and people actually brainstorm on this. Oh, sorry, I'm not logged in, but you can see there are 11 responses and to that particular question. So you actually have a pre-built response
Oh,
structure that you can also develop.
yeah, this is just like a lead code for
Yes,
developers.
yes, this
But
is lead code for PMs.
yeah, nice. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Like I feel like I got a master class on product management also and how to crack the interviews. Let's talk about money. How much money do product managers really make? Do they make money? Like what's the salary range for product managers?
Yes, a product manager generally makes a good amount if you are having a good experience. But if I would give a rough range, it depends upon the different roles again. So, say for example, the four core areas were the growth area, the platform, the innovation, and also the core PM role. So these are further broken down into industry titles, which are generally around technical product manager. A technical product manager, since they are involved in the internal engineering teams, they have an engineering background in general. So they
Mm,
have a rough analysis of a 120K plus salary. That is
mm,
a minimum that they would get. And if you see the core PM areas, that is a PM who's working on feature sets. They're generally digital PM roles, the digital product manager roles. For such kind of PMs, there is an 80K minimum that they can expect out of that. This is a minimum across US.
mm,
And then there are other roles, that is the growth PM, when experience comes into a good play, then you can actually negotiate based on your experiences. But a minimum industry standard would be around 80K to 100K minimum. A product marketing manager generally also makes a minimum of 80K plus. So minimum 80K is industry standard. And based on your experiences, you can grab on to 100K, 100K above as well.
yeah.
And it's all based on what you bring on the table, and you can change the minimum that has been set.
Yeah, and it's also obviously dependent on the
on your
city you
location.
are applying for, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Do you typically negotiate salary? Would you recommend people to negotiate? What's the technique you apply for negotiating salary? What kind of things you negotiate?
I would definitely recommend negotiating for every role because for every role, when they try to is being sponsored, a minimum salary is something that is promoted, and there is also a maximum salary range set. So a
Mm,
first question to the recruiter would always be, can you tell me the salary range that this role is being sponsored for? So you understand that this is the maximum this role can offer.
mm,
So that would be your first identification, the salary range. And then you define that, okay, this is a good negotiating bet that I can take. One important thing that I generally note is a 3 month outcome and a 6 month outcome. That is something that I try to understand from the hiring manager, and I use that as a reference point to create my negotiating factors. So
love that.
if they
Yeah.
want within say 6 months they want a 10% increase in their engagement level in YouTube, I'm definitely asking something that is hefty because that would involve more time from myself as well.
Mm,
So that's how you generally structure. And the areas you structure are, considering I am coming from an immigrant perspective, I target the base salary and then RSUs and then stocks. Sorry, RSUs and bonuses. So these are
and
areas
for
that I
people who
target.
don't know RSU, what is RSU?
Yes, these are stock units that the organization gives you, which also gives you a part of being the trade value that you can get from the organization you're working for as well. So you're contributing to the product improves, the organization gains more value, that trade value increases, and that's how
Mm.
you can also gain more value when you sell off those trade stocks.
That's awesome. What's the one piece of advice would you give to aspiring product managers or students who are looking for job?
Yeah, I would say that please do not lose hope. And just to give you a little reference, I got my first job in the US after 30 days. My work authorization document passed. So time is an important factor for us, but having that right passion and right attitude would obviously get you where you want it to be. So please hold
Mhm.
on to your passion. Do not change your passion just because
You're not getting yeah.
you're not getting the initial calls. You
Mm,
would get it if you try to do it the right ways. It worked for me. It will work for you as well. The other advice, in a one word, I would say, if you sit in the question long enough, the answer is something that you will get. So if you sit in the question, that is your product manager interview, or if you sit in the product manager interview cracking space that you want to get, you would get it eventually. So yeah,
mm,
I would say there are different ways to get there. Say, for example, I started with an internship with Bstock. I did not start with a Google or TikTok. You can do with a smaller or a medium-sized organization as well. The passion is still the same. It's navigated or channeled in a different way so that you reach the goal eventually. So yeah, that's
nice.
how I would say
That's awesome, man. That's like a TED talk.
it.
Love it. If you enjoyed this video, I'm 100% sure you're going to like this video, which is about how I got 6 different tech job offers, and also this one, which is about how I kept myself sane during the job search strategy. I'll see you guys in the next one. Until then,
Keep hustling, keep smiling.
nice.